All right, I will let Harsh start.
Sure. Hey, good morning, guys.
Good
Morning.
morning,
Morning.
everybody.
How are you guys all doing this morning?
Very
Awesome.
good. Yeah. Rainy day for us in Toronto.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I was out taking the dog on a walk this morning.
How about you, Pat? How's your
We're
weather?
good. I think we're gonna get that weather. Yeah, it's very cloudy. It's not raining yet. I was out with my dog this morning and a little warm, but the rain's coming for sure. So
Okay.
I'm
And
bracing
since
for
we have a new face, Pat, why don't you introduce yourself?
it. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. Pat Cronan, WorkTrust Solutions, one of the principals of the team there, and been doing staffing for about 15 years. We're great group of people based out of Providence, Rhode Island area. Very motivated in the space of staffing. We've got EPM, ERP, BI, data analytics, kind of our footprints. I personally have been in the Oracle EPM space. That's kind of where I've spent the bulk of my time. And yeah, just happy to be here with you guys from Toronto.
And that EPM space is our favorite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No doubt. You wouldn't know that just by looking at the podcast name, right?
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's where I started, and that's where I spend pretty much bulk of my time. So it's very fitting.
Yeah. Great to have you, Pat. All right. What's everybody doing this weekend? Azmat, no
Uh,
bike ride for you.
no bike ride. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's still raining. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe in 2 weeks' time. I still need to brush up my bike, tune it up or something. So let's
You
see.
Yeah.
guys have some good bike paths over there.
Yeah, we have some nice trails.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Usually it's like late April when people start bringing their bike
Sure.
out. So
Yeah. Concrete or like dirt paths.
there are dirt paths, there's
Yeah.
concrete also. A lot of people do road biking here.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's something.
Yeah, even in my neighborhood, I always see the cyclists on those farm roads all summer
Yeah.
long. And
Right.
they
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a few
Exactly. Yeah.
spots
Yeah.
where they want to have their coffees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
very interesting. I live very close to High Park, so it's a large park, and they recently closed it for cars, and so now we have a lot of cyclists, who cycle there, and they made it like a racing route.
Oh,
So
Oh,
they ride very fast. They don't stop. So it's yeah, it became a bit dangerous
Okay.
for little ones, particularly.
Right.
yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. Fred, any plans for you?
No, nothing super, I would say, special. Just yeah, I'll chill, maybe spend time with family. That's all.
Okay, good, good. Harsh, what are your plans?
My dad's birthday today, so gonna go over
Oh,
there and do this.
Happy
And
days. Yeah.
brother, family's coming over, so play with the niece mostly.
okay, good, good. Yeah. Happy
nice.
birthday to your dad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
congrats.
Happy birthday.
Okay. Pat, what about you?
It's funny. I was just telling Fred, I actually have a pretty slow weekend. You and I were talking about scheduling the podcast. I was worried about my youngest soccer schedule, and we are between seasons. So last weekend, the indoor season wrapped up. Outdoor season doesn't start till next weekend. So this
Yeah.
was good. So I'm going to try to find some time to probably do nothing.
Good. I'm probably planning to do the same thing. Do nothing.
Yeah, good. You got to do that once in a while, right?
Once
Yeah,
again.
that's right.
All right. So, Harsh, what are we planning to talk about today?
So, since we've got Pat on, I think all of us have all sorts of questions around staffing. I know this is a little bit different than our technical sort of podcasts, and I think it's going to be a fun little change.
Yeah.
And
For sure.
you guys, but I've got a whole bunch of questions listed up here, and I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to ask theirs as well. But I'd love to just kick it off. And with Pat, why don't you give us a high level overview of what your day looks like typically in staffing? And it doesn't have to be one single day, but like how
Yeah.
much of your time is spent on doing what tasks and what you enjoy the most, we enjoy maybe the least as well.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's very much a sales job, right? I think there's a big service aspect to it as well, right? So we've got my team. We're about 12 people, so we're not a super large team. We still all can kind of meet as one large team. We start off our days with a team meeting, kind of going through our ARECs, if you will, what clients have needs, kind of where things are. Sales folks are, trying to get next steps and pushing those deals to close, right? Recruiting folks are trying to cover those recs and make sure we have candidates submitted to those clients. And we have some very hearty discussions back and forth about what's going on and why things aren't moving and what we can do to make a move, and making sure coverage, right, that you have enough people submitted to the clients, scheduling interviews. So we probably spend a good half hour or less. Hopefully we tend to be long-winded at times as a group, right? But then from there, we twice a week we'll do some training. Could be anything. Could be we're not very, we're not technical. We're definitely sales guys, as I've warned you. But we might do like a 10,000 foot level on something new that we heard, some new aspect of one of the technologies we play in. We might train on some sales, tactics and things like that. So that's pretty much how we start our day. Then we'll have what I'll call a power hour, where we just try to stay focused, right, for 2 or 3 hours, 2.5 hours in the morning, right before you hit lunch, and just trying to get through all the tasks on our list, right? Everybody's got something to do. Once we break away from that meeting, we want to get it all done. Time kills everything in our business. So very important to stay focused. And that's hard. Believe me, I'm the first to say, right? 1 hour into that, somebody comes in, hey, what'd you do for the weekend? Or, did you see the Red Sox game, right? So it does get hard to stay focused at times, but I think by and large, as a group, we're pretty good at doing that. We love to have lunch. We all, we were outside of Providence, Rhode Island. Although they were the smallest state, there are a million restaurants and cafes and places to eat. So very big topic in our office is what's for lunch, what everybody's doing. And we all like each other enough to do lunch together, which is cool. And then, yeah. So it's fun. After lunch, kind of same thing, right? If you didn't, you have things in your list that you didn't get done in the morning, you want to kind of get through that in the afternoon chunk. And then a very important part of the end of the day is that you want to plan for your next day, right? And everybody slacks a little bit, I'm sure. But as far as having a successful day, if you can spend the last hour of your day just kind of planning what's top of mind for the next day, it sets you up for a much more productive day, in my opinion. So that's probably a typical day, without too much, there's usually some drama involved in between there.
Drama. I'm interested.
Yeah. We're working with people and, personalities, and it's always something, good and bad. And you get to hear great stories. You get to hear that it's people's birthdays. You get to hear, what people did for the weekend and share all sorts of stories. But then you also get to hear I'm canceling my interview. I had that happen to me on Friday morning. I had a candidate, and nothing, wasn't nothing his fault. I think he had to take his kid to the doctor, right? So it's life gets in the way. It's nothing bad, right? But took me a little bit to scramble on Friday morning, then I was good to go.
Yeah.
That's the drama that comes up when you're dealing with people all the time.
Good. Yeah, that's a great overview. How about I feel like networking is very important in your job, right?
Yes.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about how you keep up with people, how you find talent, where do you go to find talent, things like that?
Yeah. Good question. Loaded question. I think just keeping up, networking. One of the big things that we'll always do is attend conferences, right? That's great. The big ones, right? Cloud World. For me, being in the Oracle space, that's great. Some of the smaller conferences, Ascend, Kscope, those are big ones. We always want to have somebody from the team represented there. We'll attend the sessions, right? Again, not super technical. We're probably not, popping in the deep dives, but if, there's some sort of new release or something, like we want to check it out, right? We want to hear what the leaders at Oracle are talking about. We want to hear what the Oracle aces are talking about, right? Leaders at different companies, if they have kind of a presentation that, something new to us, right? Maybe a new module that's got some new aspect. We try to get involved. And then what's great is you can network while you're in those sessions towards the end, right? Yeah. We do a lot of proactive reach out, and I think that always stands out, right? I think we might connect with people long before there's an opportunity on the table, right? And still taking the time to understand really strengths, weaknesses, goals, what you want to do, when you want to do it. I might not have anything right this moment for you, but I'll still carve out an hour of my day to chat through your background, right, and figure it out. And I do totally wholeheartedly believe that a lot of other staffing companies wouldn't take that time. So I know that stands out for us. There, a lot of folks we found are chasing shiny objects. We had a scenario the other day where one of my colleagues was providing feedback to his candidate that we didn't even submit to a role because we had some information about the role, and they hadn't heard from their staffing firm that had submitted them. So it was a bigger staffing firm, and, things probably got out of control. So those are huge networking things, always doing what you say you're going to do. No matter how small it is. If you say you're going to email somebody, just make sure you do it. If you say you're going to send a file or whatever, or follow through on a time, just make sure you do it. All those little things add up. So in the long run, that's great for networking. I'm never hesitant to ask for help, right? I think that's a big thing in our business. It's always about finding that right resource and getting them to the project. And sometimes you don't have that person, but you can network and call the people and ask for help. And then, through their extended networks, you might get to meet more people, which is great.
Yeah.
So that's what comes to mind for me.
How about, I'm going to ask this because I get a lot of leads through LinkedIn.
Sure.
Ask you about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You use LinkedIn for networking and finding talent.
Yes. Yeah. Great question. LinkedIn today, right now, is one of our main tools and a big focus day to day. I would proud to say, I think we're just over 20,000 followers on our WorkTrust LinkedIn page. One of our partners, Heather Murray, has been a huge driving force behind really using LinkedIn. And it's funny, as a company, we've all been working together, like I mentioned, for a long time. Kind of backtrack 15 years or so ago when I started, I don't even think I had a LinkedIn page, right? I had to set one up for here. I always joke around. My wife had to set me up on Facebook, just to get social media going. So didn't really have a ton of social media. In fact, at our old company, going back, 2008, 2010, we used to, tell people not to post their resumes on LinkedIn. Don't go to the job boards, right? Because it gets convoluted, things like that. But, fast forward, I would say the last 5-6 years, we have really used LinkedIn. It has been a great tool for us. We've been able to not only stay more connected to our network of folks where we have spent the most time, but we've also been able to expand our network into other areas where, we've had some examples where clients have asked us for just recently some data analytics tools that were out of our lane. And we do play a lot in the data analytics space, but that space is so big, ever changing. We, very quickly through LinkedIn, we're able to make some contacts, develop a few key relationships in a resource pool. And through those few folks, we got connected to a few more folks. Within a 2 or 3 month period, we probably had 25 or 30 people in that technology that we knew pretty well, right? And, very early on, just getting to know each other, right? Hadn't known each other for years and years. And then just over the past month, we've got about 5 of them on a project. So, that was all because, I say all, but a lot of it was because of LinkedIn. At least LinkedIn helped us get that going. And then once we get that going, we do our process, our quality control that I like to talk about. But LinkedIn, man, what a change from when I started to now. Yeah.
Yeah. I have one more question and then I'll pass it to someone else to ask the questions.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people use LinkedIn to find jobs as well.
Sure.
So when you're looking for talent, what things do you look for in a profile? Let's say you're looking at someone's profile, let's say for EPM role. What kind of things do you look at just by looking at the profile?
Yeah, great question. I think the things that stand out for me are highlights of the resume. I don't like to put too much focus on this one, but sometimes the formats of the resume are awful. And sometimes that's people's personalities. I'm a fairly neat guy, but some folks' desks are a mess, and that's okay. Everybody's different. So I try not to hone in on that one, but as a group, we do like to kind of format our resumes the same. So when we present them to a client, they look nice, and we'll get resumes with boxes and things all over the place. So I do try to pay attention to the resumes. The experience, of course, right? Some folks will try to tell you that they do it all. And, you look at the resume and, well, you've only got, one project of doing this thing you say you do, it all. So really just trying to make sure we're on the same page with the conversation, what the topic is, right? And then, like history, maybe key clients, like, especially for myself, having been in the space for a while, I can recognize certain projects. Like if you had XYZ company that you did this specific implementation, oftentimes we know and remember that implementation. Sometimes we were involved in that implementation through staff augmentation. So if I knew that somebody did XYZ project at a client that was successful and was the first of its kind, or, a highlight that Oracle uses at Cloud World, that makes me feel, comfortable knowing that, they went on a successful reference project. They might even know some of the same folks we know. So yeah, those are probably some of the first few things that I start to look for.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will pass. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I actually wanted to tag off that a little bit and just ask, like, super quick, what are the best and worst things that you typically see on people's LinkedIn profiles? Because LinkedIn is always sending emails saying, hey, update, so-and-so section, and you can be a LinkedIn superstar, or I don't remember the terminology they use, but
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, even for me, there's no way I'm going to update all of that stuff. Nobody
Right.
has to for it, and I think some of it is just too much information.
I'd
So
agree. Yeah.
for regular folks that are going in and updating their profiles, what are some of the best and worst things you like to see?
Yeah, good points. I think I would agree with you. Like as far as LinkedIn, I think it helps to have as much of the like job history that you can, at least the companies that you've worked for, the role that you had, your title. But do you have to put every little single project that you did, right? Now all of a sudden that LinkedIn profile becomes, your resume, and some resumes are too long to begin with, right? If you're an independent and you're getting a new project 3, 6, 9 months, I mean, those resumes can be pretty long, and I don't think you want your LinkedIn to look like that. So, I think that's probably at least from a staffing standpoint, that's probably the most helpful. I'm a people person. I love hearing about everybody's different personalities, different interests. So, some people try to, I've heard, keep your personal stuff off of LinkedIn, but, I'd probably be the opposite, good or bad. I like to hear about what other people are doing. I like to know that, somebody like one of our guys runs a volleyball club, right? And he'll have his EPM updates, and then he has his volleyball updates. And I love to see that. So I don't mind that. I would hesitate putting a picture of you at a party or, something like that, having a drink in your hand, right? It is professional, but I think all in all, I'm pretty open to whatever's on LinkedIn, but, keeping it somewhat to the point and not going too off topic, because it is LinkedIn, not Instagram or Facebook or something, right?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Yeah.
And we do see that. We, especially, I don't want to pick on the younger generation. I'm getting up there, but when we interview kids for staffing, it's funny, coming out of college just to work for us, never mind for other companies. There are some folks that you gotta, all right, wait a minute, let's clean this up a little bit. You're representing WorkTrust here, so
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then if I may ask a question, but So when you have, a few candidates and a few profiles, I'm curious, how do you, do your due diligence to understand that, the profile and what they represented in resume is legit? And how do you, then do you do any recommendations between profiles, or can you describe that process?
Yeah. So we walk through, a pretty good process. A lot of our folks that we've worked with over and over the years, so we kind of know who they are. But anytime we have a requirement, our goal is to have at least 3 people submitted to the client, right? Doesn't always work that way. It's not a perfect science, but that's the goal. Sometimes we have 2, sometimes we have 5. We're not going to send 15 resumes to the client because, really then what's the purpose of me doing my job, right? But yeah, I think because of some of the things I mentioned earlier, like that proactiveness, like we can really get ahead of what we're looking for. If you asked me for a EPM planning guy today on Saturday morning, I could probably get you a couple of guys queued up by, the end of the day, right? And some of that's because we've already gone through our quality control process and we've been able to, button up exactly who they are, what they do, their strengths, their weaknesses. So that's the easy part. I think, the more lengthy part is when we first meet someone, just trying to really understand those things that I just threw out there. Talking to professional references, people that can, speak to exactly what they did, right? In the past, they worked together. They were ideally a manager that can give us a full rundown. It's perfect when you can have a job description that asks for A, B, and C, and you have a professional reference that says, yes, they did this, this, and this for this client, right? So yeah, I think that quality control process that we put in place really helps us. And then, at the end of the day, it's really the client's decision, but we want to make it as easy as, as easy for them as possible. And we want to add to the conversation, but, we really want to make it their decision, and we can share all of the data that we've collected and all of the conversations that we've had, the history that we've had, and, help guide them to a decision. But at the end of the day, we want to make it their decision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
One thing I would ask is, like, I know a lot of people, with 15, 20, 25 years of experience, how far do you go back when you look at the experience? Because a lot of youngsters say that, why should we compete against somebody with 20, 25 years? Like, is there a cutoff where people should not go back,
Yeah, I would say on resumes, I don't think anybody wants to see that you've been doing something for 35 years or 30 years, right? I think once you get to 20, you might want to put 20 plus. One of the things that we always have in our submittals is how long you've been in IT. And we typically maybe 20 or 25, and then we'll just use a plus sign instead of years, right? Just to make it easy. But I think, especially in the EPM space, if you're working with somebody that has been around for 25 years, one of the questions that a lot of us ask is, how did you get into Hyperion? What was that story? Mm-hmm. And that a lot of times that story is 25 years ago. But that story, I mean, I've asked that question a million times, and it always opens up another conversation. I worked with this guy, that girl, this person, this client that got bought out, and it takes the conversation a million ways. So although I would hesitate to put like 30 something years on your resume, once you hit 20 something, I'd probably go with that, plus. I would still want to get those stories. I would still want to hear about, what you did back then. It's probably not relevant to, some sort of cloud project now that you learned Essbase 25 years ago. But I think when I'm talking to, hiring managers, as practice leads at big consultancies, leaders of FP&A or consolidation in the industry, those stories matter. Those stories can really sometimes put people on the top of the pile, right? Just by referencing a project, referencing an experience, referencing an individual that they worked with, right? So yeah, it's kind of a tough one, but I think those are, maybe you don't have to put it on the resume, but definitely tell me about it. Let me talk about it. Good conversation for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know people go back to microcontrol days, prior to Hyperion and all that.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of like the Essbase Arbor guys. That's the one.
Arbor guys, yeah.
And I love it. And I think it's funny. I think it even builds credibility for me when I can talk about that and say that hey, I'm not a technical guy. I'm not in the field. I'm staffing. I'm, third party here, but I get that stuff. So a lot of times then, they're like, wow, S-Base Arbor. Wow. All right. Okay. So gives me some street cred.
Yeah, for sure. So do you primarily focus on your team primarily focus on Oracle or other EPM, CPM products as well?
For sure. Yeah. So me, yes, mostly Oracle, but as a group, we in that performance management suite, as I'm sure you guys have seen in the market, I would say since about 2018, give or take, when the cloud started to roll out, we really, relationships just left Oracle, right? So, we kind of had to make a decision. Do we support them? Do we not support them? What do we do? Up until that point, I mean, we were like an Oracle partner. We paid, I forget what we were getting, like I don't know if it was a gold status, silver, so whatever. We paid for something that would give training to everybody. We stopped doing that, and we just really focused on relationships. So although Oracle is probably still the bread and butter, performance management, you've got, Anaplan, OneStream, Adaptive, right? Blackline, Trintech. I mean, it comes up pretty often. But by and large, I kind of go back to the like instances of a product, and usually Oracle hasn't beat unless you're going up against SAP. So although we do a decent amount in those spaces, Oracle's still the bread and butter. Similar experience in the ERP space. When I first started, it was pretty much PeopleSoft and EBS, right? And a lot of those projects would be connected to EPM in some way, shape, or form. So if you were dealing with one of the big consultancies and they were running a big deal that had EPM, it probably had PeopleSoft as well. A lot of those relationships went to Workday, went to other ERPs. So we do try to stay up on that. But for ERPs, yeah, Oracle Cloud, Workday, a little bit of SAP. And then the one space that I just, from my humble opinion, just is ever changing, evolving, hard to always put a finger on it, is like data analytics in the BI space, right? There's just so much going on there. I had mentioned we had that scenario where we were using LinkedIn to grow a resource pool. That technology was called Palantir. And if you had asked me about Palantir a year ago, I would have said, outside of seeing the crazy CEO on Squawk Box every morning with his crazy hairdo, I didn't know much about it, right? But yeah, we put our process in place, do our thing, and that data analytics space, we can grow things out there. But Tableau, Databricks, Snowflake, those are some of the ones that we see a lot. Some of the more general data analytics roles as well, like your data analyst, data scientist, those kinds of things. And then, as I'm sure everybody here would share the same sentiment, AI comes up in a lot of conversations. We're not trying to be experts in AI, but we want to, I think from the staffing side, we want to make sure we understand what that means, what roles those are. So yeah, kind of a long-winded answer to your question, Arun, but at the end of the day, we're relationship based, and we don't let that hesitate where we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you also confirm or maybe just outline? I heard that large consulting companies like Deloitte, for example, they don't work directly with contractors, and they prefer to work through the staffing companies because if something happens, they will have one point of contact versus reaching out so many different individual contractors.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. I have noticed that as well. I think, I think for an independent consultant to onboard and be a vendor at a company like Deloitte might be too cumbersome, right? Just to start off with, you might not even want to do that. But yeah, I think, I think just like and I don't get too involved with like the business, like the paperwork and all that. I obviously am in the conversations, but luckily we have, our CEO and we have a legal team and we've got a back office that handles bulk of that. But There are some other consultancies that, man, they're always changing paperwork. But yeah, there's just so much, the levels of insurance, the flow downs. There's just so many different things that we spend a lot of time, making sure we're okay and we're in compliance with, that I don't even think you'd want to deal with it as an independent. And then, yeah, from the consultancy side, they probably just, I'll say they want, one throat to choke, when things go wrong. Right.
Right.
So that can be me in cases, and that's okay. Good, bad, or indifferent. I always want to be there for the client when things go wrong or when things go great. Right. I started off my Friday morning with somebody canceling an interview. I ended my Friday with a client from one of the big consultancies telling me that they wanted to onboard 2 resources to their project. So, it's like a emotional roller coaster throughout the day. But yeah, I would agree, Fred. I don't think I don't even think it makes sense for an independent to want to be, set up with one of the big consultancies. Just there's so many nuances.
Yeah. I agree.
Do you have to go outside of North America also for hiring?
It's funny. We just have started to do more of that, and here I am today on a podcast with a bunch of guys from Toronto, right? Well, you guys are still close enough, but
yeah.
Outside of North America, not too much. I think maybe managed services, maybe that'll come up, right? Support work. We did have just the other day a consultancy that is a small shop. They're trying to expand into Vietnam. So I had the opportunity to chat with some folks in Vietnam, and it was just a nice conversation. But somewhat new to us. So outside of, I guess, Canada, a little bit of actually Mexico. We do have some contacts in Mexico that we put on projects, but I know that's North America again. So. Yeah, Europe a little bit. Over the years, we've done some projects. I've found that we've gotten candidates on projects where they've had to travel there, but in most of those occasions, I think it was more like a global implementation. So the project and all the business that I do, kind of started and was in the U.S. So it wasn't much to do with like a Canadian, say a UK-based company. It was more U.S.-based company that had a global office, and consultants got to travel to a project for that wing of the implementation. So
that's right.
Yeah. Got it.
But we're open to, it's funny. If we can put, business together, if we can get people to work and keep people happy and deliver resources, we do business just about anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I've got a very loaded question for you, Pat.
All right. I'm ready.
Specifically for Oracle EPM.
Yeah.
What skills do you see in demand, or what skills do you see coming to demand? For example, you and I talked about tax reporting cloud service a couple of times now.
Yes. Yeah.
And last year, I've never heard about. Yes, I've heard about it, but nobody asking me. Do you have somebody who knows TRCS? But this year, you and I have chatted a couple of times about it. Similar to that, what trends do you see in terms of demand for EPM skills?
Yeah, for sure. That I would say still. I mean, if you needed a tax guy today, that'd be a challenge for sure. That resource pool is definitely a small one. I think the skills are out there, but they're probably folks that are working for a consultancy, maybe somebody that's in an industry that owns the module. So, that doesn't help me on the independent side of things, right? When I'm trying to get people on projects. So yeah, that probably a close second would be the profitability, right? That comes up probably more than tax for us. I don't know. I guess the bigger consultancies, I don't know, as Matt and Harsh, you might be able to, talk about your Hackett days. Maybe you have an in-house guy that does it. You lean on somebody, you figure it out. But we always struggle. Profitability, I think there's definitely more people that do it. But again, from the independent side, I mean, we could probably reach out to a less than a dozen people and be done working that resource pool for the day. And usually when we do that, maybe one person's available. And oftentimes the rate that person wants is, way more than the rate that we can extend, right? And that's, I guess, the economics of a small resource pool, right? But yeah, those are probably the two for EPM. trying to think what else. The integration has been, I've seen there's just some changes around integration, how they staff it. I DM, I guess, would be the right way to, talk about that integration these days. And, just making sure you have somebody that really knows how to do it, right? It used to be, more of FDM guys, FDME guys. And, depending on if it was an enterprise or a smaller company, there were different, avenues and things to do. But yeah, DM definitely comes up. And I think the first time somebody asked me for a DM, that they thought it was a data management role. And then we started to look into it and talk about it. I'm like, this doesn't sound like data management. It's integration, right? And I hear I'm the sales guy, right? But we got to the bottom of it, So yeah, those are probably the top that come to mind. And we're always looking for folks with those skill sets. On the financial side of EPM, I think a lot of people do close and consolidation. Account recs is definitely the lighter area, right, for the resource pool, especially the independent market. Definitely enough people out there where we can deliver people. We do deliver people. I've got account recs people working for me now. But I pride myself on getting resumes to a manager in 24 to 48 hours. Account recs might take me a couple extra days, right? So when they come up, I try to preface that in conversation that, we might not get somebody for you tomorrow, right? It's and I don't know why, like, on the planning side, I find like, girls can kind of do all the different modules that fall under planning. It's pretty widespread, but on the financial side, that account rec sometimes gives us a little bit of a headache.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's funny, Arun, I had exactly the same question typed up here. But just to tag off of that a little bit. So when you're talking to different folks and I guess interviewing or pre-qualifying them, you've got the skills that you're looking for. What are some of the soft skills that you see that people can improve on, or just, for folks that are getting started interviewing, and what are the quickest areas where they can have some good improvements from some tips and tricks for things like that?
Yeah, 100%. I think no matter how long somebody's been in the space, been a professional, I think it always helps to have a conversation about, what you're getting into as far as like prepping them for, say, an interview, right? Making sure that you're, familiar with the company. It might sound silly, but, if you just want to, if it's especially just know a little bit about them, you just don't want to assume anything. Consultancies, I think, we'll tell people to go on LinkedIn, see who you might be connected with. And then when you're, getting into the conversations, the first thing I'll say is, 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? Try to really listen to what the team, or, if you're doing an interview, you might have a architect, practice lead, couple people peppering you on questions. So really understand what the question is, listen, and then, go to it. Try to come at it from a very, high level, professional level, not just I this, I that, I know this, maybe more, substance, facts, right? I think those are always helpful. I think it's okay to, brag about yourself. In fact, I think it helps, but there's a fine line, right? You don't want to come across as a know-it-all. I think if you can, brag about yourself and talk about a project where you saved the day, turned the, company around, turning a project around or something. And if you, try to incorporate we in there a little bit, that will help. Just asking some pointed questions, right? If you get a question from a manager that, is very specific experience, maybe you don't have that experience, I think the last thing you want to hear is nope. And then dead silence for, 30 seconds, right? You want to have some sort of, example of where you did something similar, or where you did something for the very first time and you did successfully, achieve that task, right? Rather than just kind of having a, I got nothing. And I've had folks say that before. I got nothing. Well, all right. So yeah, those soft skills are super important. I think, just being able to present yourself as a professional is half the battle, right? the technical skills are obviously important. That's what they're bringing you on for. But at the end of the day, you're going to spend the next 6 months, 12 months, working with a team, implementing something. There's going to be deadlines, and, there's going to be stressful times. There's going to be drama. And, I think when you can all kind of row in the same direction and you have those soft skills, those are the best independents that can really diplomatically drive a project, drive their track, whatever it might be. So super important, Harsh. Yeah.
Also, but I'm very curious to hear from you if you see any changes in the market. I would say demand in the market. I have seen recently, a few articles on LinkedIn where someone will say, "So here we come with all of those tariffs that there is again uncertainty in economy. No one knows what will happen next, and some companies are just getting ready, for a crisis, very similar to what we had with COVID-19. So, do you see any change in demand, on the market, or?
Yeah. I'm crossing my fingers, not yet on tariffs. We shall see. I really hope, Fred, that nothing like COVID happens. COVID was kind of crazy for us because you had companies that were just stopping work for no reason, like just because of COVID. And it wasn't because they were out of money. It wasn't because something, crazy happened on the project. It was just because there was so much uncertainty. So yeah, if tariffs bring up some uncertainty, that's not good for all of us, right? I think once things got figured out, people figured out, how they could work remotely, things did start to get back on track. But there was a good chunk of time at the very beginning of COVID where, a lot of folks were on a project that got canceled, on a project that got, at least paused. And that's hard for folks. It's hard for anybody, right? Independents, especially, they're waiting for that, that monthly check to come in, and they put in a lot of hard work. And if you're on a 12-month project that gets cut because of some crazy tariff, that's hard, right? Hopefully nothing like that happens. I did start to see a little bit around, the government layoffs and things, right? That's starting to come through in conversations as we connect with people. Hasn't been terrible, but just a few folks that we've talked to over the last couple of weeks, it's hard to have those conversations because, again, people are waiting to complete a project, and you're banking on being on a project for a long time, and that stinks to have to cut it short. But yeah, some of the folks that were supposed to be on long-term government contracts, luckily we don't have a ton of government end clients. We've got some consultancies that do staff into government projects, but luckily we haven't been impacted yet. But some of the folks in our network have, and we're here to help. So we're trying to get them in front of other things.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That sounds promising.
Yeah, either way, like at the end of the day, like if we got to hustle a little bit harder, we'll just hustle a little bit harder, right?
Right. Yeah. Can agree more.
What's your advice for young graduates coming out of school, college, like what if they want to get into Oracle EPM, ERP, HCM? So any particular top 5 things to do, training?
Yeah, I would say, getting in, like, I guess depending on if they're coming out of college, it's depending on what they majored in, what they did. Like, you could jump right into a consultancy. I feel like you could get an entry-level job at a consultancy. Sometimes it might be best to, be at an industry client, right? Working in, a specific area, kind of learning that one thing. That might only be a year or so. I'm not saying you got to do that for 20 years, then going to a consultancy. Jumping into that consultancy with some familiarity around the products that you're in and the space that you're in helps, I think. And then while you're at that consultancy, I've found that you're opened up to a whole bunch more, like environment wise. You'll see a lot of different scenarios and situations and reasons for doing things. And then from there, you might stick around with the consultancy for years. You might go into independent work. But as you're going through that, my thoughts would be to, network like as much as you can. Go to the conferences, go to the user groups. I would 100% get to know the people on my teams that have been doing it for a while. Much like when I started in staffing, and if I connected to a guy that was, S-based Arbor guy, like I knew that, he knew his stuff or she knew her stuff. So, getting to, find folks that are willing to help you out, willing to, mentor you in a way, and be somebody that you can call on. If you had an opportunity to be a part of the group that like you guys have, right? You guys all invited me into your Friday call, and I might have to pop into a few more, because those are things where you might be on a project and you're new, you've been in the industry for a year or two. You probably don't want to, be the squeaky wheel that's complaining about something, and but you might be able to do that within your little network of people. Right. And that kind of stress relief could help, right? Projects get stressful. So yeah, those come to mind. I don't know if you have to get certificates and all those kinds of things. It can't hurt, but definitely just always getting better at your craft. Right. So, and I would lead by example by doing that, right? I'm not studying the S-based book, but I'm reading sales books all the time. We're training twice a week as a team in-house. So, I would give that same advice to, a developer, right? Like, go ask somebody else about their skills. How did they, perfect their business rules? How can you get better? How can you do things faster, more efficiently, right? And then just having a mentor, I think, super helpful, not only just for like the work day to day, but also just career wise, personality wise, and life stuff as well. Right. I think, outside of the grind of the day, you've got other things to think about. Right. So, what kind of role you want to have, how you want to evolve, those types of things. And it's good to hear from folks who have been through just that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Have you seen a shift in, we had in-person work in the office.
Mm-hmm.
COVID happened. It became virtual.
Yeah.
Now that we're past COVID for like 4 or 5 years now, is there a shift from virtual to hybrid to in-person when you talk to clients like, I don't know, big consulting firms? Do they want the resources to be in the office, traveling?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I would say pretty much my view on that would be that I think hybrid. Like I don't think outside of there's still some 100% remotes, and by and large, I think just about every conversation we have, I could almost guarantee there'd be some sort of hybrid travel schedule. I prefer hybrid. I like that hybrid model, right? I think it's a good good just evening off of, crazy travel and then being at home, especially if you have families and things like that. One of the things that in my early days of staffing, because all the independents were road warriors, I've always found it funny that one of the things that we really had to talk about in addition to the work was the travel. There were so many conversations where, whether it was somebody, my wife's due in any week now. I mean, I might be able to travel. I might not. Kids are home for the summer, whatever. I'm burnt out because I've been traveling. Sometimes if you're getting on a plane on a Sunday afternoon and then you're flying home on a Friday and your flight gets delayed, you get there Saturday. By the time you unpack your suitcase, you're already going back to the airport on a Sunday. And if you do that week in and week out, it really did wear on a lot of people. So yeah, from my early days of talking to consultants, those road warriors, man, I found it tough just going to conferences every few months, and here they are week in and week out. So I quickly stopped complaining about travel, and I enjoy traveling once I get places. But yeah, I would say hybrid by far is what we're seeing. Sometimes it might just be kind of a CYA just in case the client needs travel, especially with the consultancies. You might, and it's not a lot, 25% might be the case. And then, just like you might have a 100% remote project, you might have another client that wants to see you a little bit more. We've got a few that, still ask for like a local person, which is understandable. They want to see a little bit more. But even that, might be 50% or something, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think by and large, the biggest change would be going from road warrior to, ultimately hybrid. with kind of a pit stop during COVID to, you know, everybody was virtual, whether you liked it or not, right?
Yeah. True.
Also, but do you see any, you know, I would say spike in requests related to AI, but not only AI, but also, you know, like machine learning, anything like that can, you know, work automatically to some extent?
We have, yeah. So it's still connected to, at least for me so far. And I know that AI world is huge, and we've got a lot to learn about, you know, what other kind of roles can be staffed out there. But from what I've seen in my little world so far, it's been still targeting, you know, like the same audience, like that finance team, right? The CFO's office, you know, trying to, you know, show them how AI can help improve their organization, right? So the request a little bit different, right? Instead of needing a you know, a team to implement new software or upgrade a software that they have, it might be you know, a data scientist to come in and, you know, walk them through a process. It might be a, you know, a Python developer to build out some, you know, development that's created, you know, some sort of automation within their groups, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, we didn't really get those, you know, those roles many, you know, going back 5 years or so. So, and I think, you know, like anything else, if you know, if our process, which, you know, I think is a pretty tight process, and as we get to meet people, we always continue to grow organically. So I have a feeling that as we do more placements around AI, you know, even though, you know, some of them might be more focused within a, you know, finance driven organization or group, you know, that consultancy that asked us for a person, you know, that the next ask could be a little bit larger around AI. So, and for us, it's exciting to learn something new. So, yeah, kind of still learning, but those are probably some of the early changes, and I expect them to be a lot more over time for sure.
Yeah.
Oracle World always seems to come out every time. I feel like every time I leave Oracle World, the last couple of years, there's been more learning around AI and how it can work. And I guess we all have to do what Oracle says. So that's okay with me, right? As long as it leads to more placements.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I have to join another podcast, but Pat, it was so nice seeing you, meeting you.
Oh, thanks, Asmat.
I'm
Yeah.
part of another podcast now. I have to join that.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, Asmat.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Hey, but if I can also follow up, you know, on that AI thing, do you like in your organization, do you use AI? And if you do, how do you use it?
So yeah, you're asking the wrong guy. Yeah. We are trying to. Yeah, we're trying to. Yeah. So we've used AI for like email blasts to clients. We've got some tools that can craft our resumes, right? So we haven't made any major investments yet, but we're talking to different companies that target staffing companies for things around AI, specifically to, like, you know, clean up resumes, send out, you know, messaging to whether it's an end client or even candidates, like certain jobs and things. So yeah, I think AI can help us. Our CRM system has got some AI tools that can be used to kind of tie in, like, you know, I mentioned we do our planning. You know, when 15 years ago, I got my pen and my paper, and you know, I was writing things down, right? I've at least I'm digital. I've been digital for a while, but you know, we're also looking into some AI tools there. And then one of the big ones, and I don't know if we'll have this perfected anytime soon, but we did test out a AI tool that could like act as a scribe on phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like when we do professional references, that's a big one. But we've got more work to do. Some of the, you know, might just be, you know, whether it's the accents, you know, we're all from New England, so we don't pronounce a lot of letters at times, and you know, we're talking from folks all over the place, so everybody has their own accent, and I think sometimes AI misses that a little bit. So when you're reading through, you know, the summary, it doesn't always make sense, but we're seeing some value in that. And I think if we stick with it and, you know, work with these other third parties that can support us, like over time, yeah, we'll definitely see some of these AI tools will be adopted more for us. No question about it.
I think interesting you said that, Pat. Teams has an update now where you can update your voice profile.
Okay.
So it kind of understands your voice profile, your accent, things like that. So
Nice.
I think most of the tools are going to get something similar.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I just set that up a few days ago, but even before setting it up, Teams, we use Copilot to help exactly what you were talking about, taking notes in meetings.
Yeah.
It does a pretty good job in that it definitely takes all the notes, everything that was said, it'll capture all that, and it does a great job at that. But even summarizing meetings, giving you the key action items or takeaways, I'm surprised how good of a job it does at that. I'm always usually taking notes, at least of action items that people need to take.
Yeah.
And most of the time I compare it to what Copilot has done.
Okay.
And for the most part, it captures everything and then some. Like I'm sure there's some things where we just kind of talk about and then scratch off the list during the meeting. It'll
Sure.
capture those, but it's way better to capture it all and just eliminate what you don't need versus if it misses something, which so far I haven't seen.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Well, what I've found is like if everybody is virtual and on headsets, Teams does do a great job. But if you're in a meeting room, some people are virtual, you're in person in a meeting room. What I've seen is like it's a hit or a miss.
Okay. Yeah.
For the conversations the folks are having in the room, because you have people sitting at different areas of the room. So it's a hit or a miss when it comes to that. Otherwise, if everyone is virtual, you have good headsets, like I agree with Harsh, it captures everything.
Yeah. We have my team, Arun, is mostly based in New England, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. We're in the office a few days a week, but we've got a couple people outside of the the area, so they're 100% remote. And that does definitely pose a kind of a conflict where there's gaps in the summary, and it's even sometimes if I've been remote traveling, when you dial in, it's hard to understand some of the the conversations that are going on around the table versus what's on screen. So I could get that. The other funny thing is I know a couple of my colleagues from our morning meetings, they use, I think Harsh, I think it is Scribe or maybe a tool similar to that. And we as a team need to be mindful of our chatter after the business is over, because they might be calling HR about some of the some of the conversation. But that's that was funny to see some of that stuff typed out.
Interesting. Maybe I have one last question, if Harsh and Fred, if you don't have anything else. I was going to ask, okay, you look at candidates' profile, they have a lot of experience. What other things do you look at? So I'll give you an example. So Fred has a blog. He does podcast with us, also does, presentations. Harsh does the same thing. A lot of presentations at Kscope, Ascent, things like that. Asmath also has something similar, right? So we all have other things that we do in the Oracle community itself. Do you see that as an advantage? Do you look for things like that when you look at a candidate's profile?
Yeah, 100%. Yep. When I first started doing this, one of the first things that I did, and probably funny because I'm not a super technical guy, but I'd go right to the guys that had blogs and all of the original Hyperion guys, before LinkedIn really started to take off, in my opinion, before some of these other things that we're doing, I don't remember there being podcasts as much, back then. But the blogs was by far, we would sign up for the blogs, we'd get updates. And through those conversations, those were very helpful for me, because I met some folks that, I still talk to today that were doing their blogs, or they'd be helping their friends run a blog. And then, for me, it would just be, even if I wasn't working directly with those individuals, because I showed an interest and I was participating, they would help me out by answering a technical question, right? Hey, I've got this role from a client. Here's the top 3 responsibilities. I get the first two, but this third one makes no sense. It's, very technical. And, talking to somebody in that blog could very quickly kind of decipher it for me from a non-technical, standpoint. So yeah, those always stand out, Arun. I think, being involved, right. And being a part of that, larger community, right. That's super huge. So yeah, anytime I see that, I know I'm heading in the right direction, right. If you've got, attended Kscope, spoke at Kscope, Cloud World, whatever it might be, Ascend, we're in the ballpark. We know we've got a good person that, takes the time, out of their day to day, right? Because, you're not getting paid to do a blog post. You're not getting paid to do podcasts. Unless you guys send me a check, I don't know if but, I think it just shows some dedication. It shows, you're involved. And for me, it's been, again, super helpful over the years, kind of being a part of those things. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. All right. Harsha, Fred, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I did have one. I know we're rewinding back probably about 15 minutes into the conversation, but in some of the demand, not only in terms of skills, I know you mentioned account rec, tax, and profitability, like some of the new skills that you don't have enough candidates for, or that they're just a little harder to come by.
Yeah.
But in terms of projects that are coming up that you're looking to staff and things like that, are you seeing any shift in the types or nature of projects? Like, some might be a full multi-product implementation, some might be single product, some might be upgrades. Are you seeing any differences in things like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think from the requests that we get, the biggest trend that from when I started to now, all on-prem big project specific to EPM would be that was every single week we get something around that. Now I've found that the projects are even bigger. If they're not going on at the same time, they're somewhat closely aligned in timelines, and you're, multi-tiered ERP, EPM, supply chain, right? HCM, you're getting, you're hitting all the bases. So, yeah, that's the biggest change. Definitely the, the type of project, like that, what used to be just a, system 9 to 12 upgrade, right? Now you're talking big finance transformation across the board. And for me, it's okay because it just opens up the door to more different aspects of the project, especially when you're dealing with the bigger consultancies that have dedicated practices in those areas. Over the last 5 or 6 years, for me, somebody that spent a ton of time in the EPM space, I probably didn't know the supply chain leads at Deloitte or KPMG, 7 years ago, but today I do. Right, I go and meet those folks and try to talk with them, and obviously try to support their projects. So yeah, that's probably the biggest change, those types of projects, and kind of the window that I see into the IT world.
Yep. And are there any different sort of skill sets that you think people would need really in these large transformation projects versus, just implementing a single module and, that sort of it? Or for the most part, is it the same and you're still looking for the things you mentioned earlier, like, competency in the core application plus those soft skills and, being able to communicate well and all that?
Yeah. Good question. So definitely you still need, still have the same needs around your architects, your developers, wherever the gap is. Sometimes the gap could be in, both of those areas, depending on what's going on. That Friday project that I mentioned, that I had a manager asked to bring 2 people on, one was a developer, one was an architect, right? So those kind of remain the same, but I think one, like, especially in those multi-tiered deals, the folks that are coming from a little bit of a strategy background, that have a little bit more functional knowledge, right? I think we see more of that. And, I don't know if it's just, could be Deloitte and KPMG and the big boys trying to save some money, and hey, we want a guy that does it all. I get it. But, I think those higher level strategy type roles are coming up a little bit more, where we probably didn't see those, years ago. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest one for me.
I think I can answer one of those for you. What I've seen is, like, if you have an implementation project versus, let's say, a maintenance or a support project, I think presentation skills are very important when it comes to implementation projects, right? I know we are all technical, but having a creative mind to put everything into a slide in a way that makes sense is very important when it comes to implementation projects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harsh. Oh, good. I was going to say, Harsh, the one of the, when we kind of intake a role, one of the things that we always ask is, top responsibilities, any icing on the cake kind of stuff, right? And I would say that one of the common things that I've heard right from a manager's mouth is that, and it's a general thing, but they want somebody that can, explain the concepts of the application, right, to the client, and then turn around and put their hands on the keyboard, work with the offshore team, work with the development team, get through the build. So, 5-6 years ago, I might have just been staffing the developer to be hands on the keyboard, right?
Yep.
So that ask has certainly come up like frequently.
And typically from some of your end clients, what type of constructive feedback do you get about people that you've staffed where you think that there's a lot of room for improvement for, I guess, technical or functional or just EPM folks in general?
Yeah, we're always striving for feedback. Sometimes it's tough to get, managers are busy. We're always chasing, but I can't think of any like specific feedback. I think, what I do and what my team tries to do is just always stay in front of whatever we have going on. So if we place somebody on a project and they start on a Monday, within that first week and a half, like I'm reaching out to the manager to make sure I'm doing a quality control check. Like, are things okay? And if they're not, let's address them right away. And just that simple task of kind of, a lot of folks might just set it and forget it. Oh, it's a 6-month project. Don't need to worry about it. Right. I think if you stay in front of the managers, you'll get some feedback. Sometimes it's always different. Sometimes it's, hard for me to really understand what's going on because it's the end client that's got a problem. There's 5 different people involved, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that, the person that we deliver is doing their thing. And there are some times when they're not, and we try to react quickly and resolve it. Sometimes that means taking the person off the project. Sometimes that just means having a conversation with the candidate to could be just as simple as to like Arun's point. Hey, you need to present a little bit better. You need to be more vocal in a meeting, right? Might not be a technical aspect. Other times it could be, right? Maybe they're a little slow on business rules, right? Something like that. And sometimes we can remediate and fix quickly. Other times we're working on backfills.
Nice.
But yeah, I wish I had like a specific example, but that's kind of vague, but should give you some insight.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Pat, before we end, do you have questions for us?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been answering a lot of questions, and I should have some questions for you guys. I think all in all, I was thinking that your team here, the EPM Coffee Chat is a good, just a good point of reference as far as like who I work with, right? Harsh and Asmat from Hackett, right? We certainly deal with all the consultancies. Arun and Fred, you guys do your independent stuff. You've all had other experiences working for consultancies. We didn't have anybody from industry on here, so maybe next time we'll get some industry folks on here. But like you guys are just a great group of folks. Those are the folks that I want to stay connected with, be with most of the time. And yeah, who knows? I guess any thoughts? What do you guys think about staffing, and how do you? I get like Arun and I work closely together. Fred, we might get a chance. Harsh, you're still at Hackett. We actually support Hackett. I don't know how much we would work together, but when did you guys first start hearing about staffing firms? Have you worked much with staffing firms? I guess that would be my one question.
Yeah. So I was at Deloitte for probably 3 years, 2.5 maybe. My exposure to staffing, specialized staffing firms, is through Deloitte. That's the first time I came across a specialized staffing firm.
Sure.
And we used to get a lot of profiles for the needs that we had at Deloitte. And obviously, that's how we got connected, Pat.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
When I started my own thing, obviously we got to work together, and I got an engagement too. So that's amazing.
Yes, yeah, right.
And Yeah, I think one of the things that I would say is every candidate has, yes, your client, like the big fours or the other companies, they have a requirement and a need, but the candidate also has specific needs and likes and dislikes. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
What I find it interesting is if the candidate is upfront, say that, okay, this is what I like to do, and this is something that I don't want to do. If they're upfront with, let's say you and Pat, you and I are talking. If I say that this is what I like to do, and this is something that I don't want to get into, right? That upfront conversation is very helpful for both of us, right? For you
Yes.
as well as me. I think that's what I prefer. I've talked to a lot of folks after I left Deloitte, when I started my thing. So that's something that I look for when I talk to somebody. Okay, what do you like to do, right? It's not like, okay, I have this requirement. Do you want to do it? No, I want to hear from you. What do you like to do? Is this something that you're interested in? Makes a lot of difference, right?
Yeah, less transactional, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only thing I can also add is I think it is important whenever you connect with new folks, it is to look at things as a building long-term relationships.
Yes.
And that means that you have to be transparent. Like if you don't know some stuff, just say don't know. Because you don't want to get in the project and fail and then never work again with the partner. So
yeah,
I think honesty is very important here.
Yeah.
And just to outline whether and you know how to do that, and you have had experience, and you have done that before.
Right.
So
yeah, you're right. I agree 100%. Like honesty, it's important because when you work with, let's say Pat and I are working together, and if I say I know this, and Pat's trusting me, he put me on a project, and I don't deliver, that's not good for me, but same thing, right? Not good for Pat for his client. So yeah, honesty is very important. I've come across many people who put a lot of things on their resume saying that I've done this and that and whatnot. When I actually talk to them and ask about specifics, no.
It's not there. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Pat and I were talking about one stream account reconciliation.
Yes.
I got one. I talked to the person, and I realized no, he doesn't have any experience in account reconciliation. So it's the kind of thing, right? So.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Pat, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. It's been a blast.
Yeah, we'll gladly have you next time whenever we have time to chat. Maybe a little bit more about other things in EPM.
Yes.
And maybe we'll try to bring someone from the industry side, like you said, Pat. So
there you go.
Cool.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for today, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Yeah.
You too, guys. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.